right, Jordan, at 24, you're out of shape. You wound up in the ER. You dreamed of being the sporty dad for your kids. You'd given up on playing sports. It cost you at 37. You're in the best shape of your life as a dad of two. Your secret, according to your ex, your pinned post on X was your love of sports. Um, and so what I'm doing, I'm just kind of collecting these stories of this intersection of fitness and psychology and faith and self-improvement and trying to, connect with people that have found physical fitness, ha people that have found physical fitness helping them in their life, helping them stay not only physically healthy, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually healthy and things like that. So, take me through your story from, I don't know, 24 or before 24, from birth, however far back you want to go up until now.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Colin, and that's a great introduction. I'll just make a quick little edit on that. So that pinned tweet's actually from 2 years ago. So now I'm 39, but I'm in
Okay.
even better shape at 39 than I was at 37. So the process is still working
Well, that's good.
strong. Yes, sir. Um, oh my gosh, like you can't give me too much free ground because I'm a trained academic historian and a philosopher by choice, which means if you give me the space, I'll take all of it. And then some, and then some. Uh, Let me just start by talking a little bit about growing up as a sporty kid and as somebody who just found themselves through athletics, which I think a lot of young men really resonate with, just men in general resonate with. Because that arena is a place where we're not told to like sit down and be quiet and be reserved. That's the place where we get to roughhouse. It's the place where we get to express our desire to, physically proclaim ourselves in the world would be the best way that I could put it. And, I got a 4-year-old son, and
Hmm.
that's all he wants to do is physically impose himself on the world. Sometimes in a good way, other times in a way that has to be guided and channeled a little bit less
Yeah.
aggressively, of course. Um, but growing up, sports was this ever-present thing in my house. We used to watch. I'm from Canada. We used to watch the old Sports Desk, which is now Sports Center. That's what was on our TV in the morning, and I used to grab the sports page in the newspaper when you used to have a newspaper delivered to your front door every day. Um, I grew up loving hockey, idolizing athletes like Ken Griffey Jr. and Patrick Waugh when I was, 6, 7 years old. Um, my favorite things to do was play sports with my friends at recess and to try and get better in the sports, that I was playing organized, like hockey and soccer. Um, so sports were always this place of initial, I would say, self-knowing, which, when you're 8, 9, 10. That's not how you think of it, but it's more like sports just dominate my life. It's like
Hmm.
I think about sports, I play sports, my friends and I talk about sports. Like all we do is sports. All we do is sports. Until we, hit puberty, and then it's about girls and other things and other things. Um, but I think my story is very similar to a lot of other men, right? Where it's like we grew up being athletes, our particular, career paths didn't allow us to get to the next level, whether that be, varsity in high school or playing at the collegiate level or a pro level, right? Like our careers were ended, and it was ended because we weren't good enough to get to the next stage. And that creates a kind of identity death. And I don't think I'm
Hmm.
being too severe with that. It's a real death of identity. And we recognize this with pro athletes all the time. You got the pro athlete who's had the 20-year career and all they've ever done is play sports and they retire. And it's like, well, who am I? What do I do now? I don't know what to do with myself. And there's a lot of empathy in society for that person, but not for the 19-year-old kid who had a dream of playing college, but, was forced to hang up the cleats,
Hmm.
and society kind of mocks that person. Like, oh, you thought you were going to be an athlete? Like, you're no good. You're not fast. You're not strong. You can't jump. Like, you're bad. And you kind of deluded yourself. And now it's time to get to the serious work of, finding a job and fitting in. And, we're not allowed to really process this part of us that's no longer being actualized or realized. So when I start off the tweet at 24, that was me not getting to the next level. For me, it was soccer, and it was because I had two devastating leg injuries in my final 2 years playing high school. And I became, I started tilting towards another passion of mine, which was music. And I started playing in a band. And, you know, the life of a rock and roll star, especially at the bottom of the totem pole, is not one of health, uh, for sure.
Mm.
Um, but you know, I always knew that sports and athletics and working out and being fit and pushing my body physically was a core component of who I was, and I just sort of made this pact with myself, that whatever happens in my 20s, I need to have an established fitness habit, and I need to be in way better shape going into my 30s than I am going into my 20s. And, you know, I just, I guess, got a health scare at the right time to sort of just jolt me into picking that habit up probably a few years earlier than I wanted. But that's kind of like just the initial story. It's like a return to self. It's like as an adult, playing sports is not seen as something that is really acceptable unless you're doing it like in a rec league and if it's kind of a joke, right? If it's like, you know, a softball league where, you know, it's like The Simpsons where everything is basically just about drinking beer and
Yeah.
this you're not really there to be athletic. You know, you're playing the sport, but really it's a social club, which is fine, but I think if you were somebody who grew up in sports and sort of found your best self in and through sports, then as an adult, you kind of need that space again where you're training and pushing and competing and surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals who are, you know, pursuing the same type of goals that you are. But it can't be the same. It can't be the same as when you were young, and maybe that's where we can take the conversation next is like, well, we want to play seriously, but we're amateurs, you know, we have jobs, we have families, we have all these other responsibilities. Why should we care about training hard, improving in a whatever sport it is that you're doing as an adult? And isn't that just a big distraction from the more important things of your life? To which I say, you have it all backwards.
Mm.
You have it all
Yeah.
backwards.
Yeah. I love the idea of the athletic philosopher. And you mentioned, you get older and you're an adult, and sometimes like, there's nothing wrong with fun for the sake of fun, but you become an adult and it's like, hey, let's go golfing, or let's go play soccer. And like you said, it's kind of a rec league, and it's fun, but it's kind of something you'll do on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon or something like that with some buddies. And then um, I love the idea of the athletic philosopher, that sport being bigger than it is. One of the things that I really focus on is getting people to work out and getting people to exercise so they can serve the people around them better. I think of like the Sunday school teacher that wants to be able to get on the floor and play with the kids and things like that, and the grandma that wants to be able to bend down and pick up her grandkids, and that sort of mentality. With that's why you do it. You have a bigger why. What is your, if you had to pinpoint or sort of summarize like the athletic philosophy, um, what would be like your elevator pitch? I'm an athletic philosopher. That means blank.
I like to use the true experiences that we find ourselves in sports to mine self knowledge. Like that's a philosopher is interested in truth and in
Yeah.
understanding. An athletic philosopher looks at what I do in the gym or how I compete and how I train and recognizes that that is real, objective evidence that I can then use to go in and subjectively know the self, right? So
Mm.
it's a personal philosophy in a way. It's a philosophy of experience. So for anyone who's interested in philosophy, it's a phenomenological approach as opposed to an ontological approach.
Okay.
Ontology is big fancy word for the nature of things.
Yeah.
Phenomenology is a big fancy word for the experience of things. So, and it's an experiential philosophy that's grounded in concrete action
Mm.
because so much of the world is up to interpretation. You know, and I'm a historian by trade, and history is all interpretation effectively. But there is the event. So there's the event, which is like, you know, the 0.5% of history, and then there's the 99.5, which is the way in which we talk about the event, or we reconstitute the event through memory and through different types of evidence. Um, so what I'm interested in then is, you know, In the gym, yeah, it's mental, but like at the end of the day, I have an objective set of outcomes. Like if I say I'm going to go deadlift, whatever, like just throw a number out there, 250 pounds off the ground, and I want to do it for 5 reps, and I do it, that's real. Like that can't be taken away by the mind. That can't be reinterpreted to say like that didn't happen. Like now I've got something concrete. So I got something I can work with, and now I can go into the self, which is this very mysterious place of like the spirit and the mind and like these projections and these heuristics and these shortcuts and these signals like that. It's very difficult for us to really get a sense of who we are without like something hard and
Mm.
tangible and concrete to hold on to. So athletic philosophy is like a philosophy of self that I kind of back into through the objective toil that I go through in an athletic endeavor, whether that's training or competing. But that's it's not an elevator pitch, but
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
I'm working on it.
you
I'm working on it.
learn a lot through successes and failures, right? If
Yes.
you're I'm going to deadlift 250 for 5 reps and you succeed, you can learn something about yourself you through that objective experience. If you fail, you can also learn something about yourself, especially based on your reaction. I'm thinking this morning, it was just my wife and I this morning in the gym, and we had about 45 seconds left on the clock, and it was as many rounds as possible. And in my mind, I'm
Mm.
like, 45 seconds, I'm done, good enough. And my wife kind of looks at me and picks up her kettlebell, and I'm like, because
Oh.
I mentioned I'm not competitive, but her and I are competitive with one
Mm.
another, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, she's going to do another half a round in this 45 seconds, so I have to. And we got that extra 24, whatever it was, 24 reps in that 45 seconds. And so, I don't know if there's a whole lot to analyze there, but in my mind, I'm like, it's good enough, right? The 3 rounds we did in these 10 minutes is good enough. She's like, oh, there's 45 seconds left on the clock. Even if it's a quarter of a round, I want to get those extra reps in, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One of my tags that I say all the time, especially to the people that I coach, it's like the truth is in the training, right? So if I'm a philosopher and I'm interested in truth, well, the truth, I'm going to find the truth in the training, just like you found the truth about where your effort level stops and where it starts, right? And if you would have, say, not gone for those 45 seconds, the mind is going to create all these rationalizations and these excuses and these sort of like shortcuts out of it, like
Mm,
as you even were alluding to.
yeah,
But the truth is, you stopped for the final 45 seconds. Now, why that happened, that's up for the interpretation, but that it happened is not in question. It's not in question. So we'll then be able to figure something out about you, whatever lesson we're hoping to extract. And sometimes it's a deep lesson, and sometimes it's just you got tired and lazy and quit. And it's like,
yeah,
yeah, I did. Okay.
yeah.
That's okay. Sometimes that just happens. That just happens. But it's that idea of what I do in the gym is truth. It's what I do in the gym is truth. What I do in the sporting arena is truth. It's a type of real truth. And if I want to utilize the training for, and this is, sort of the coaching thrust, is for self-discovery on the way to self-mastery. Well, I'm going to find out something good or bad or benign or indifferent about myself because I've got a record. There is a record of me
Mm,
acting and doing, which will then bring in my motivations, my intentions, my aspirations, my proclivity for excuse making, the
yeah,
limitations that I put on myself,
yeah.
right? It gives me everything. It gives me the good, the bad, and the ugly. And usually it's kind of like all three at once when it comes to pushing ourselves physically. So as somebody who's interested in helping people live the best lives possible, because that's another aim of the type of philosophy that I'm interested in, which is experiential, but also moral. I'm interested in moral philosophy. I want to know the good. I want to
Mm,
know the good way to live. I don't want to live in a bad way. And so athletic philosophy is very practical. It's practical because it gives me an objective result and it gives me an objective aim to then move to from that result, which is moral improvement. moral improvement. And this is not like my idea. This is literally how athletics were created by the classical Greeks, 2,800
Right.
years ago. The society that gave us this. This is what they said it was for. This is what they said it was for. They said it was for character building. They said it
Hmm.
was for the attainment of virtue and excellence, right? And this is what actually made the athlete a a moral paragon in those societies. Um, so
Yeah.
that's like just a little bit more about why we want this truth and how we utilize that truth to actually live better lives.
Yeah. I coach gymnastics just part-time, and I just do a little bit of strength and conditioning with the gymnastics team in the evenings. And I think of Olympics, right? And you think of ancient Olympic athletes. They were they were physically strong and physically capable, but there was something a deeper philosophy there that they had a resolve that other people didn't. And that in itself is, I think, can be seen as a moral virtue. Like, there was something difficult to do and I did it. Whether or not I succeeded or failed, I took home gold, silver, or bronze. Like, I joke about, you watch sports and you see the kind of the armchair quarterback and you're like, we need more defense, we need more. And I'm like, wait, but I'm sitting here watching TV while I'm watching other people play a sport, and I'm critiquing how they should play the sport that they are playing professionally while I'm sitting on the couch eating Doritos. Um, as far as like competition goes, do you think philosophically, does the competition extend to the other? So like, if you were playing soccer on a Saturday afternoon at a park, and uh, do you find yourself competing more with yourself or with others, if that makes sense? I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know
a
how
great.
you package that into philosophy.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. The historian in me says context matters in all things. So it sort of just depends on who I'm playing with and
Okay.
what the aim of the game is. Sometimes I wouldn't even care to be competing with myself or with anybody else. I might just be enjoying the fact that I can kick the ball around and run after it and feel the exhilaration of the body in motion doing something with proficiency. So competition may actually never enter into
Mm,
the equation depending on what it is that I'm doing. But to bring it back to this idea of the athlete as the moral paragon, like the contest is in classical Greek, like that's the agon, right? It means the contest, and that's the root of the word agony in English. And there's a corollary to it in classical Greek, which is agones, right? Which is specifically the toil of the athlete. So it's literally like the physical straining of the athlete is related to the public performance of the contest, right? And that's what's very important about the competitive aspect of athletics is that it must be done in public because that's where sort of the moral courage comes from. Because
ooh,
what does
yeah.
the athlete risk? What does the athlete risk when they toe the line in any athletic performance? Like certainly there's the physical struggle and the physical sacrifice. I got to give up my calories, right? I got to give up some of my muscles. I
Yeah.
might even have to injure myself in order to get to the goal that I want. But it's also this production and projection and performance of self and all the virtues. So when I show up and I'm in a competition, a public competition, I'm on the line. Myself is on the line. My confidence, my self image, like everything is on the line because if I don't show up with integrity, if I quit or I give in to a weak excuse, well, then I humiliate myself. Then I humiliate myself. So the importance of competition is not so much like competing to win, but it's about showing up and competing with integrity. And sometimes that looks like driving towards victory with everything you got. If I'm like a high level elite athlete where competition is the point, right?
Yeah.
But even down onto my rec, back down onto that rec league, it doesn't necessarily matter if I win or lose in my pickup hockey game or my soccer game. What matters is that I'm bringing integrity to my performance, right? And that
Mm,
I can weigh how I show up as an emblem of my character. And that's why. the athlete was revered as a moral paragon because they strove, they aspired towards excellence. They were willing to sacrifice and discipline themselves to sort of harness the passion of their heart. Because why else do I want to become a champion if I don't just like desire it with every breaking fiber of my body? You know, all the
Yeah.
great athletes in the world, it's the thing that consumes them. It's their passion, it's their obsession. But it's not unbridled. Like it's disciplined. It's the Mamba mentality of Kobe Bryant. Like, hey, I may be more talented than you, but I'm also going to outwork you. And
Yeah.
that just shows that I'm disciplined more, that I care more, that I want it more than you. I'll
Yeah.
get it no matter what. And then to for Kobe Bryant to like, show up in a basketball game and to put it out there. And it's like if I lose, that's death, and sports symbolically are really
Yeah.
about life and death, but for the athlete that cares, that really is life and death. And if you ever played a sport where you were really trying to win and you didn't, you feel like death. Shoot, I
Yeah.
was just watching my 10-year-old nephew play a soccer game a couple weeks ago, and it's a middle competitive league, so it's not the most competitive, but there's it's competitive. And they blasted this other team like it was 12-0, or it was like one of the most lopsided contests I've ever seen.
Hmm.
And one side is life and the other side is death. No joke. The kids that got worked, you could see their life evaporating out of them until they just didn't want to even like they didn't even care to play anymore. They were like, we're dead. We're dead. Ritually, but also literally in the game. Like we're dead.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
this stuff really is about life and death. And there's lots of academic theories
I
about why
love
this
I
is
love
so.
the idea of the sort of moral paragon and the moral compass because I there are afternoons where I'll be in the gym myself, or if I'm in like a group fitness class, right? And contrast those
Yep.
two. If I'm
Yep.
in the gym by myself, we have an app where we log our workouts, and it would be very easy for me to be like, oh yeah, I did 5 rounds, or oh yeah, I did 225, or oh yeah, I did 100 reps or whatever it is. I'm in there by myself. I could have done 98, but I'll just round up. Nobody's looking. But if I'm with a group, there's sort of that accountability, but then there's also that sort of built-in competition and that
Yep.
ethical virtue of honesty because you can't fake it when there's an audience, right? You can't
Yeah.
you either hit the goal, you didn't. You either hit the ball or you didn't. You either scored a touchdown, scored a goal, or you didn't.
For
Um,
real. For real.
I
But if
I
it,
think of oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but even in your example, you may be able to fool other people, but you didn't fool yourself. You lied
Right.
to yourself.
Yeah.
You lied to
Right.
yourself. So it's like I did 98, but I'll tell you I did 100. And in the back of your
Yeah.
mind, like I never did 100. So
Yeah.
you don't like you never get away with it. You can't lie. There's no lying in sports. There's no
Yeah.
lying in sports, which is again why a philosopher should like this arena because there's
Mm.
just no room for BS. Like it's always
Yeah.
exposed.
And that's
Always. You're always exposed.
and that's
For
typically
better or for
one like
worse.
I don't think of a philosopher. I don't think immediately think of athletics. I think of a nerdy bookworm, somebody. But philosophy is actually it's a lot deeper than that, and that actually it had me thinking. I pulled it up to make sure I get it right. Where I look at athletics and I look at sport from a faith-based perspective, and if you look at
Yes, sir.
Paul was very Hellenistic, right? He had very Greek, he had some Greek roots, and he writes for physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things
Yeah.
holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. And he makes tons of analogies of athletics and Olympics and run in such a way as to win the prize, right?
Yep.
And that's a moral virtue when you get to I worked as hard as I can work. I know that I did. I left everything out on the floor. I left everything in the arena. That's a moral virtue, whether you win or lose or win the prize, win the medal. You worked as hard as you can work. That in itself is a virtue. But
Yeah.
if you do work as hard as you can work, that is a reward, right? You
Yep.
pushed your body, you pushed your mind, you pushed your spirit as far as it can go. Um, I love that idea of just athletics being a moral virtue and being a paragon. I hadn't dove that deep into it before. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and Paul is kind of on the shoulders of like there's lots of philosophers that philosophers and theologians who use those types of analogies. It's just a very common language, but you know, somebody who's a little close in time, somebody like Aristotle, he did the same thing. And he's writing, 400 years after the birth of the ancient Olympics, pardon me. So the ancient Olympics were started in 776 BC,
Mhm.
and they went to 394 AD, uninterrupted. So you have 1,000 years of the ancient Olympics uninterrupted. And Aristotle, by the time he's plying his trade in the Lyceum in Athens in the fourth century, the 300s, athletics have already been around for 400 years. So you don't get philosophers talking about the morality of athletics because it's already permeated into society. Like everybody already
Yeah.
knows. So they're not talking about athletics. They're just using athletics as the analogies because it's already understood that athletics are about morality, that it's about character and honor and virtue. And Aristotle, 400 years after the ancient Olympics, he's complaining, just kind of like what we might complain about the pro athletes being more about money or the
Mm.
spectacle or the fame. He's like, we want the athletes of the olden times. I want the golden age of the athletes back because the athletes we have now, they don't quite get it. And Aristotle is actually an Olympic historian. So he actually went back and chronicled the champions and created lists. And he actually got his own statue at Olympia for being a historian of the Olympics. So there's this very important understanding. It's very similar to the way in which, secular society rests upon the moral foundations of a religious society, like a Christian society. Somebody like Tom Holland makes a very good point in a book like Dominion, for example, about that. And it's you see this all around now with the new atheism of our age kind of like disintegrating in front of everybody's eyes, and revealing the substructure, which is like Christianity and that sort of thing. So it's very similar with athletics. It's like the ubiquity of athletics and morality have always been known to be coexistent, and there hasn't been much of a need to philosophize on that because it's a philosophy that's lived out in action. It's a philosophy that's lived out in action. And just to further this into the ancient Greek experience, we're talking about the first society, civilization in human history to really like put the individual and the dignity of the individual kind of at the forefront and at the
Yeah.
center of their society with the democracy. But even this idea of the yeoman farmer, which is where the democracy comes from. So it's like, not to get too deep into the ancient history, but the athletes, the people that competed in the ancient Olympics, they were the elites of society, but they were the farmers, they were the landholders, they were the soldiers, they were
Mm.
the politicians. Like they were the ones who did everything. The people who voted in the assemblies, the people who stood out on the front lines of the battlefield. And what was the one activity above all that was celebrated for their individuality? You don't go into ancient Greece and see statues built for politicians, for orators. You don't see statues being built for the famous generals. You know who you see the statues being built for? The Olympic champions. That's it.
Yeah.
Because athletics, out of all of those, was the one orienting activity that would allow that person to fulfill all the other obligations and roles that they would have in society that would come with the privilege of being able to train and compete in the games.
I love the idea of think of Olympics. Kind of 2 points with that are swimming around in my head. Like gymnastics literally translates to train naked. There's nothing to hide, right? There's no clothing, there's no false screen. It's you're training naked. And I look
Yep.
at some of the gymnasts I coach and I've met and I've talked to some of the coaches, and one of the things I notice is one, gymnastics is not a cheap sport to get into. It's a pretty expensive sport. It requires commitment. It requires dedication. And the ones that are there are athletes there that are well off, right? Parents are well off. It's nothing for their parents to 500, $1,500 a month or whatever for their gymnastics training. There's other ones their parents have to work really hard and scrimp and save and get scholarships and things like that. They're coming from all different walks of life. The one thing I notice is there are kids there that are committed, and there's three, four, maybe five out of this gym that are they're on track for Olympics, right? They're on USA gymnastics team. They're meeting with professional coaches. And I'm over here like, oh yeah, your squat looks good with your barbell, But these kids are, some of them are amazing athletes, and the ones that there's just a difference in attitude with some of them. The ones that are committed and the ones that are there, I don't want to say there for the right reasons, but the ones that are there to excel in their sport, they do it because they're committed. And I think there's a moral virtue in that, and that you can extrapolate that to marriage, you can extrapolate that to a career. Like in a marriage, I'm committed, right? I am here through thick and thin, good and bad, sickness and health, life and death. I'm here, I'm committed. um, do you take some of those moral virtues and that philosophy from athletics? Where does that apply in your life? I mean, I'm a dad, I'm a husband. I run a gym, run a couple little side hustles. I try to apply a lot of what I take in the gym and apply it to my life. I love being lazy and I run a gym. So it's like I run a gym because I love being lazy. It gets me off my butt and gets me moving and it forces me out of that vice. What do you apply out of the athletics? What do you apply to your life?
Such a good question. There's a lot. I'll back into it this way. So you mentioned the word commitment, right? And athletics certainly teach you about commitment. And one of the things that you sort of hear in the fitness space is motivation is cheap, right? Motivation is cheap. And what you really need is discipline. What you really need is discipline, right? And so commitment is this extension of discipline where it's like, even when I don't feel like doing it, I still show up and I still do it. Okay. So you learn that kind of, it's like, jumping ahead a little bit. You do learn to just go when you don't want to, but I think there's something even more important, and it goes to what's like below the commitment, what's below the discipline, because there's different kinds of discipline. And let's just use two hypothetical coaches. Although if you've been an athlete, you likely had both of these coaches, so you know exactly the person that I'm talking about. There's the coach that is the tyrant. He or she does, they just yell. They
Mm.
just yell, they just threaten, they just punish. And so you'll discipline yourself because you don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to go have to run the sprints. You don't want to have to do this or that because you know you're about to get punished. And so you'll discipline. You'll discipline yourself. And it's the same with that teacher that just yells, right? It's the same thing. Tyrants can get you to do things, but you know what? That breeds resentment.
Mm.
Nobody is happy to be yelled at consistently and told what they're going to do, or else some bad going to happen to them. So you end up resenting that coach. You end up resenting that teacher. Even if you are getting results, you're not really getting them because you want to get them. You get them because you don't want to get in trouble. And those are
Yeah,
two very different things. Those are two very different things. And over time, you resent whatever that tyrant is and you rebel and you rebel. So
yeah,
if your level of commitment to something is, and your internal dialogue is something like, just show up, you lazy whatever, like you're going to be fat if you don't get like, and it's all this negative, do this or else, do this or else. Like, guess what? That might work for a little bit. And I do believe there is like a very small section of people where that type of tough discipline can actually drive them towards great
mm,
places. But that's a very small
yeah,
subset of people. That's not most people. Most people need discipline that comes from love. So this is like
yes,
so we're talking about parenting, like come on. Like you're the tyrant who
yeah,
yells and like threatens the kid because you're way bigger than them and you control everything about their life. It's not hard to get kids to do what you want them to do.
right,
Like, hello, corporal punishment. Hello, like this is what's been done forever. So,
yeah,
so, so, so there's that. But what does it breed? What does it breed?
yeah,
So the alternative is commitment based out of love. Okay, or
yeah,
discipline that's based out of it's like I recognize I just have to do this. And why? Because I'm willing to engage in the discomfort and the suffering to get to the better place. And
yeah,
love is the only thing that actually can power me through that with a positive emotion, with like a positive encouragement that's actually going to grow my character. It's going to allow me to bring a better version of myself to whatever endeavor I'm doing. So, when thinking about training in sports, my general advice and my general thrust for everybody is like, you got to start from the heart. Like
Mm.
love has to be the thing that powers the entire endeavor, or else it's not going to take you to any place of moral worth. Because it's
Yeah.
just going to lead to resentment and regret and despair and despondency or shame or any of these negative emotions that then turn you into that turns you into this negative turns you onto, pardon me, this negative feedback loop, which just
Yeah.
crashes you into the ground. Um, so like how do you then transfer these things into life? Well, if I train from my heart, which just means, first of all, I have to enjoy some element of the motion. I have to enjoy what I'm doing. I have like curiosity, creativity, imagination, fun, joy, excitement, enthusiasm. These are high vibrational words that are attuned to the spirit because the spirit, when those things are present, I don't care what the discomfort is. I don't care what the adversity is. I actually want to go through it.
Yeah.
Like when I love parenting my kids and they are maybe expressing their anger, which is appropriate to a 4 year old, which doesn't look good, I'm happy to be patient and to eat a lot of the aggression
Yeah.
that's coming to me. And it's not comfortable, but I recognize that my love for the child is saying, don't lash out in anger and frustration. Do not. Do not. That's a worse version of you. Rise to the better version. Rise with
Mm.
love. And then, like, it's easy. And then I just, I look at my kid, I'm like, you can go for as long as you want because I'm going to outlast you.
Yeah.
And when you do, I'm going to be here to give you a big
Yeah.
hug because that's what's going to win the day. So, training from your heart with passion, it's going to allow you to find that commitment to show up at the gym when you don't want to and to push you through all those sessions that you don't want to do. And there's a biological reality to this that you actually gain more ability to do that. I
Yeah.
forget the name. There's actually a part of your prefrontal cortex, we call it the do hard things muscle.
Yeah.
There's an actual scientific name. I just forget it. I'm not a scientist. But there is a part of my prefrontal cortex. It's the do hard things muscle. And when I push through adversity, it grows. It
Yeah.
grows and becomes stronger. So I actually am training my brain to see adversity as the path forward to the place where I need to go, which
Yeah.
then, like, if I just consistently do this in the gym, I have a kind of a transferable fluency with this going when I don't want to, but going for the right
Yeah.
reasons when I don't want to.
Yeah.
So that's like
Yeah,
my
your brain
long.
starts to I think your brain starts to I think it codes for like new proteins and it looks for it begins to like not only accept challenges, it begins to like challenges. And it
Correct.
begins to like the discipline. And you mentioned earlier the training as like as discipline out of love. I run into coaches all the time where if you don't whatever, if you don't put your phone away or you don't, if you don't pay attention, I'm going to send you to conditioning. And I'm like, no, conditioning's not a punishment. It is, if anything, send them home. Don't let them condition because conditioning is a privilege. It's an asset for them. It's something they get to do to help them exceed at their sport. And I try to tell the kids that like I'm not making you squat because I don't like you. I'm making you squat because I want you to be a better athlete. And I'm making you squat because becoming a better athlete while you're here is one, it's just a good thing to do because your parents are paying for you to be here. So it's just that's a moral reality that if somebody is paying for you to be here, you owe it to them to put in some effort. And two, there's a moral virtue in doing difficult things when you don't want to, and you learn how to translate that into other areas of your life. And coming from a faith-based perspective too, I think of doing things out of love so often in a probably any religion, let alone Christianity, a lot of times it becomes about, well, avoid sin, avoid sin, avoid sin, avoid sin, instead of doing the righteous thing out of love, doing the righteous thing because you love this walk, because you love this process of sanctification, right? In the Christian walk, it's
Yeah,
sanctification. And if
yeah.
you think of that philosophically, you're overcoming adversity, and it's not you're not just
Mhm.
avoiding sin to be sanctified, you're doing righteous things
Yes.
and pushing yourself in the gym, pushing yourself as an athlete, pushing yourself in your sport. there's an element of righteousness to that. And again, I think it goes back to Paul, just him taking all of those analogies from Olympics and from competition. There's some truth to it for sure. You know,
Oh, I
and
mean,
there's
like,
something in our human spirit, in our human, probably in our DNA, if you wanted to get scientific about it, right? It's in our DNA to um, sort right and wrong, good and bad, vice and virtue, right? And
yeah.
there's certainly vice and virtue in sport.
It's a moral arena to display character and then to generate character. Another we'll go back to the classical Greeks for a second. I got a lot of ideas swirling in my head on this. I did a whole podcast. Can playing sports make you holy? I have my own podcast because
Ooh,
I need to talk a lot. It's like, does playing sports actually make you holy? And my argument is yes, and I'll get there in a second. But the ancient Greeks, again, to think about the moral paragon of the athlete, there's this term called ascesis, which is effectively like righteous self-discipline in the direction of holiness or moral sanctification. Um, so even like the whole point of the athlete disciplining themselves is to gain this kind of spiritual purity, is to gain this type of spiritual purity. And when the athlete sets a record, for example, or they win a crown at the Olympics, the ancient Greeks used to speak about it in terms of, breaking through the mortal plane and briefly, temporarily being able to, touch the fingerprint of the fingertips of the gods,
mm,
and then you would come back down into the mortal plane. But this idea of like holiness, I do a lot of reading, and I was reading this one book on Exodus, uh, and the author makes this incredible point where he says the ancient Greek ideal of virtue is the exact same as the Old Testament ideal of holiness. And the Old Testament, I'm Jewish. So the Old Testament ideal of holiness is to be set apart from the
yeah,
things that everybody else is doing and to elevate yourself morally. Like you set yourself apart and you morally elevate yourself. It's something like the dietary laws, for example, is a good example of that in Judaism, right?
yeah,
Like we just we don't treat animals poorly just because we eat them. Moral elevation. When I'm reading the Old Testament, it's they have to outlaw these barbaric practices where it's like people in the desert, and you understand this, it's like they would come across an animal and they would like lop off the leg of the animal because it's not all they could take with them, and then they'd leave the animal
right,
three-legged just to bleed out and die. And in Judaism, it's like you never do that. You never do that. Like
right.
you do not disrespect the animal, any animal like that. Um, so there's this idea of this moral elevation by setting yourself apart from what everybody else does. And you do this through rigorous discipline. And the particular idea that can connect these two is this idea of the affliction of the soul. Is this ancient Hebrew idea of the affliction of the soul, which is why Jewish people fast on Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day of the year, where we are asking for atonement with our sins, where we can become at one with God, right? Atonement is at one
Yeah,
ment. And how do we do this? We do this by overcoming the temptations of the body to eat and to drink. We have a full water fast and a full food fast for it works out usually to around 26, 27 hours. And it's through that overcoming of the temptations of the flesh that elevates your spirit and sets you apart morally, and brings you closest to God, which is exactly what the ancient Greeks told me. That's why I do the athletic training is to attain the best virtue. Like arete, the ancient Greek word, it's one of these like almost impossible to translate into English. Some say it means virtue, some say it means excellence. But in an athletic sense, that's what the athlete is after. The athlete is after arete, which is combination of body and mind, right, to bring about spiritual righteousness or moral fortitude, right? However you want to put it,
yeah,
spiritual purity, whatever. So it's like the athlete is supposed to bring their mind and body together to attain righteousness, which is exactly what we do in Judaism to attain the most holy position. The at one with God is to do the same thing. So there are these very intriguing and certainly you could then move that forward into like a Christian understanding. And for me, like I mean this with the utmost respect. It's like Christ is like he's like the Jewish Hercules is the best way to
Mm.
put it.
Yeah.
You know, he embodies it. He has like that's why the crucifixion is so important, right? And that's why, God had to send down the son is because it had to be embodied. It had to be
Yeah.
embodied for it to mean something. And you've got sort of like this embodied sacrifice for virtue, which is, like the Herculean legend. But then it's being done for what? It's not being done for power and might and glory like Hercules. It's being done for mercy and loving kindness and grace, which is like these are these Old Testament uh,
Yeah.
virtues. So it's like Christianity is this beautiful mix, obviously between the Hellenistic and the and Judaism. But given how you're interested in approaching this from a faith-based perspective, which, for me, sports are a spiritual practice. Like
Yeah.
as a philosopher, and I'm Aristotelian, if I want to extract the morality from anything, I have to understand the nature of that thing. So I have to know the truth of what it is. And then I have to merge my passion with that. And no matter what that activity is, then I am engaging in a moral pursuit. So, when thinking about sports, what's the nature of sports? Spiritual practice
Mm.
to gain virtue. Okay, so
Yeah.
now I got to bring my heart, I got to open up my heart to that. And when I merge the two together, then by nature, automatically I'm engaged in sort of a moral practice. So I know I'm kind of spinning around all these different ideas and all these different
Yeah.
historical references, but what I want to impress upon the audience is how real this stuff is, how real
Yeah.
it is, and how realizable it is through not just like what I'm doing today, but with a long lineage in history and in theology.
It's ancient, and I think I my background is in behavioral health and psychology, and specifically justice studies. And I have my master's degree in psychology with an emphasis in forensics. And if you think of basic principles of a court system, we have malum prohibitum and malum in se. There's malum in
Mm,
se, which is like, or malum prohibitum is it's wrong because there's a state statute that somebody decided this is wrong and we need a law against it. It might be illegal in California, but it's not legal in Arizona, kind of thing. And then there's malum and say, this is wrong because society says it's wrong. And I think we talk about where do morals come from and where do virtues come from. And a lot of times we like to think, well, they're socially conditioned and they came because of this thing and somebody decided it was wrong. There's something in our DNA and there's something deep in us that wants that idea of vice and virtue, and we sort of discovered it and made laws around it, right? Rather than we're created moral beings in a sense. And the Hellenistic perspective, I don't know why this popped in my brain. You said something earlier, but I think of Paul again. He says, First Corinthians, I strike a blow to my body, I discipline my body, and I make it my slave so that after I've preached to others, I won't be disqualified for the prize. That
mm,
that I deny. Oh, you were talking about fasting. I
yep.
deny myself. I discipline myself. I make my body my slave. I tell my flesh no, so that I'm not disqualified. I can preach to others and say, look, I did it. There's virtue in this. There's truth in this. There's a reality in this that transcends. It kind of transcends, I think, cultures. I think it transcends religions. I think it transcends a lot of, and that's the beautiful thing about philosophy is it is transcendent in that sense. Yeah, man, I'm gonna be at coaching gymnastics this afternoon and be thinking about this all day. I'm gonna be.
I hope that's
It
not
says
necessarily a bad thing. I apologize
no.
for
It's
your
good. It's good. I'm gonna be yelling at the kids about Greek philosophy and talking to them about Hellenism and
Can I
um,
give you a funny story here? Can I give you a real
yeah,
funny story?
absolutely,
So
absolutely,
you're talking about like gymnastics as being this idea of bearing all effectively, right? And gymnastics, that comes from ancient Greece where
yeah,
we're in the gymnasium. And one of the most famous philosophers from the classical Greek period, Plato, right? Plato's not even the guy's real name. Plato means wrestler because he was a wrestler, right? And these gymnasium were these places of intense intellectual and physical exercising. So imagine like an open court in the middle and it's kind of like rooms and stands off to the side. You'd have people having philosophical debates and then they'd come
Mm.
and they'd do some sparring or some gymnastics and then they go back. So it was this arena for the mind and for the body. But Plato is one of the great philosophers of all time. And the legend goes, the legend goes, when someone would come up and challenge him philosophically, about half the time or so, he would engage in dialogue and discourse and, a Socratic method. And then the other half of the time, he would strip naked and say, pin me, prove it, prove it.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's wrong. Like, because if philosophy is going to mean anything, it has to be realized and actualized in the world and then mobilized towards the good results that you say it should. This is why Marxism
Yeah.
doesn't work. It's not a philosophy that works.
Yeah.
Okay. Like
Well,
everyone, when everyone says in theory it works, but when I try it, it doesn't. Well,
yeah.
in theory, then it actually doesn't work because
Yeah.
if it did, you would be able to live it out towards the good results that you say it does. And that's not every time you try to live it out. So when Plato says, pin me, bro, like it means like if you really believe this and are willing to live by it, then you should be able to risk it and put it on the line, which is
Anybody
again
that's
public performance
anybody
of the athlete.
that's
I don't want you stripping naked in front of your
right.
athletes,
Well,
but it's just like,
anybody that's grown up with a brother knows that's true. I
of
want the
course,
last cookie. No, I want the last cookie. Pin me, bro. Right?
pin
You
me,
have this
bro.
argument, you have this debate, whatever it is, and my brother and I, my older brother especially, because we were closer in age, we wrestled and fought all the time. Broken furniture, broken lamps, you know, the whole nine.
There's
But yeah, there's a lot of
there's a
truth to that,
truth.
I think.
There's a truth in that, and it may be an uncomfortable kind of a truth, but it's a truth nonetheless.
Yeah.
It's a truth nonetheless. Um, and that was just something that had been floating in my brain a little bit with some of the things that we've been talking about. So I'm glad I could find a place to get that in where it wasn't total non sequitur.
Well, take the last minute or two we got, 5 minutes or so, and plug whatever you need to plug. We can find you on X, Instagram. Are you writing anything? You have your own
Yeah.
podcast. What can you plug?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. This was a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
love dialogue. Dialogue is like philosophy is a kind of magic because conversation is magic. I
Mm,
believe it literally is a type of magic,
yeah.
conversation. It's one of the few places you can actually create something new, like
Yeah.
something that's never been thought of before or discussed. So that
You know,
this this is
I
this
had
is awesome.
this yeah, I had this other quick thought too.
Sure.
In our group fitness classes before every class, you talked about in the arena there's philosophy happening and then there's the physical aspect happening. In our gym before every workout, before every group fitness class, we have like a quick devotional, right?
Ah, beautiful.
Here's a truth about God that I want you to wrestle with, that I want you to sit in. Now let's go do something physical. And
Mm,
at the end of the class, I always kind of circle back and um, I always say, okay, today I'm going to be in prayer for our hearts or whatever. We have this what we call a battle cry, where we
I like
focus
that.
on that's what our mind's eye is going to be focusing on while we're working out. Our hearts, this truth, whatever. Sometimes they're cheesy battle cries, sometimes they're a little more philosophical, but we have that happening in our gym where we're going to
It's
wrestle
awesome.
with truth, but we're also going to wrestle with our bodies and wrestle with discipline too. But
Yeah. So like another just a little thing to help you conceptualize what you're doing. It's like the body and what it can do when we think about athletics morally, it's the outward consecration of my inward sanctification, right? It's the
ooh,
outward consecration. Yeah,
yeah,
I need it like my body becomes the outward consecration. So just like I have to wear the vestments and the robes and do the rituals and the
yeah.
symbols, like athletics becomes this way for me to prove and display the inner sanctification or the inner holiness that's a part of me. And certainly
Yeah.
that's obvious that's obviously going on at your gym, which is awesome. I
And
love,
that's that Mamba
love
mentality.
it.
The proof was in the
Yeah.
pudding, right? He
So
was good. He had some natural gifts, talents, and abilities, but he also was disciplined and practiced, right?
yeah,
And
that's where you get the world beaters.
his outward wins were evidence of his internal sanctification, his consecration to his sport, to his
The
discipline.
the best in sports in each of their individual sports, they all have the same thing in common. They are supremely talented. So they are elite athletes. You don't get to
Mm.
be number one in the world without being kind of a genetic freak. Okay. They love it. They're obsessed with it. They're obsessed with it and getting better. It's all they do. They have no personality because they only think about getting better at that sport. And then they have the work ethic. So they
Yeah.
work harder than everybody. They love it more than anybody, and they have a genetic predisposition to be better than anybody. And
Yeah.
if you just think hard work and talent can get you there, you're a fool because the elite in the world, they're elite for a reason. You're not like them. You're just not like the elite athletes. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to say, guys. Like you're just not. Like you can think you can do the 10,000 hours and get there, but you can't. It's
Yeah.
one of those things like that you kind of are born with. And
Yeah.
we should kind of celebrate that. It's not there's no issue with that.
Yeah.
Um, okay,
Plug what you want to plug.
Hitch. Sorry. Yeah, follow me on Twitter, X at JB underscore Goldstein. It's where I do a lot of my just general conversations with people, and I'm very active on there. I write a Substack. It's called The Athletic Philosopher. That's where I do a little bit more of like the longer form stuff. It's usually a place for me to describe how I utilize this kind of knowledge and wisdom to coach individuals in fitness and in life. So if you're interested in sort of like guidance or mentorship or trying to understand physical activity as a spiritual practice to aim towards, virtue and a self-transcendence or to go on a journey of continual self-transcendence, um, that's a place where you can find out a little bit more about how I do that. Or if you're listening to this and just you're like, I want some of that, you know, hit me up with a DM on Twitter, hit me up with a message on Substack. I'm currently building my website. I've just been moving and I've got a personal, it's been a chaotic 18 months in my house, all good things, but I've had to pare back a little bit for my own business. Transitioning out of being a university professor into being an online entrepreneur is not the easiest thing to do.
Mm.
And when you move countries with two kids, it's also not very easy. So I'm currently rebuilding my brand and my website. So in the future, I'll have more stuff, but right now it's mostly just me writing and me conversing and me talking about the work that I do with my one-on-one clients. I also do a podcast. It's the Athletic Philosopher podcast. You can find it on Apple, Spotify. I also coach on, you can see here, it's called Tribal Training.
Yeah.
It's an online endurance team. It's run by head coach Ryan Dreyer. He just competed in the Ironman World Championships in France last weekend, and he had an amazing race. But we are a team that's dedicated to living out this kind of training and specifically to then compete in endurance events. So, like ultra marathons and Ironman competitions. And we have these, we're online. We're from all over North America. We've got even some people over in the UK and in Australia. But the big thing about the team is that we like to anchor our online community in real world events. So we have team races. So just to give you a sense of what that's like, next year we've got 4 team races where it's like anywhere from a dozen to 2 dozen of the people that are on the online team, which is about 60 people, will all show up and compete together. So we've got this camaraderie built in, and you're all wearing the same uniform. It's just like the sports that you used to play when you were growing up. I'm
Mm.
telling you, it's like those travel tournaments with your buds. It's the best. So
Love it.
we're running a 50 miler in Arizona in January. We're doing the Ironman 70.3 in Chattanooga, which is the half Ironman in May. We're doing Prayer on Fire Backyard Ultra, which we all just did 2 weeks ago as a team. And that's in September in just north of Indianapolis. And then I believe we're also going to do the full Ironman in Florida. And if you're really interested in competing with people who are driving for performance, but really they are trying to unlock the best version of themselves, people train and they smash races, but we've got people on the team that's like they're building businesses. They're reconstituting their priorities away from working for the man to being more at home with
Yeah.
family, more present husbands and fathers, leaning into faith. All those things are things that we encourage on the team, and it's a bit of a more of a group dynamic. So I also
Yeah.
coach there. I am the tribal professor, and I bring this style of coaching directly into it because I'm not the guy. Ryan's the one who will get you ready to take on these, and he's incredible. And I'm the guy who gives space for these types of conversations and these types of
Awesome.
realizations.
Well, I got resources and gyms in Arizona and Florida. So if you need a place to work out or want to come check out our gyms when you're in town, just shoot me a DM and let me know. Where in
Yeah, yeah,
Arizona?
yeah.
I'm curious.
Tucson. We're
Okay.
doing it's a Oracle Rumble.
Okay.
Oracle Rumble 50 miler
Okay.
at the end of January. And I think we're
Okay.
gonna have something like I don't even know. It's probably like 15 or 20 guys. So
Gotcha.
just imagine this. It's like 15, 20 guys who are all whatever, like late 20s into like mid 50s. Some
Mm.
people with kids, some people like looking to start families.
Yeah.
Uh, we all stay in a house together for 4 days. We
Okay.
do intentional mindset work. So we all like get into the right zone. We do
Yeah.
writing, we do sharing, we do reflecting. Last year, we did our mindset session around Exodus chapter 14 and chapter 15.
Mm.
Um, we do technical training, like in terms of what we all do our packs together, and then we all go out and we smash the course. We all smash the course together. And Ryan and I do live coaching, so we help the people that
Awesome.
struggle. We pick them up on the way, and we make sure we all get to
Yeah.
the finish line together. And then we all hang out and we celebrate together, and then we all go back to our separate lives.
Love it.
So it's a really
We
unique thing that we've got going
yeah.
on. Really unique thing.
We got about 6 or 8 chapters in Florida too. So if you need any resources or anything
Yeah,
when you're down there, just shoot me a
yeah,
DM. I
for
can
sure.
connect you
That'd
with
be
somebody.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. I would appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time and your willingness to hop on here with me, and it's fascinating. I love the connection between. It's part of the reason we're branded Trinity Fitness, the connection between spirit and mind and body, right? And there's a deeply
Yeah.
philosophical connection there, similar to what you're doing. So
Oh.
I know you got to go hop off here and get to some
We're going
things. So
trail.
I'll
We're
let you
going
go.
trail. We're going trail running. That's what we're doing.
Ooh, fun.
I'm literally unfurling my socks to put them on, so I can put my shoes, and I can literally go right out the door and hit the run, and then I'm gonna
Love
pick my
it.
kids up, and we're gonna go to the beach.
Great.
But I love what you're doing, and I love to extend an invitation for you to come on my show, so I can ask you questions about what you do, why you're doing it, what animates your spirit to do it, and to find more connections and synergies between our approaches.
I'd love it. Let's set it up.
All right, rock and roll. Thank you so
Great.
much, Colin. This was a
Thanks,
lot
Jordan.
of fun.